Welcome to Nightmares Incorporated, where our goal is to ensure your sleep is anything but restful. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's submission, entitled A Lesson in Demons. I saw the dead man from down the street. I was minding my own business on a lazy Tuesday afternoon, having settled down for the day in one of the rougher areas of whatever city I happened to be in at the time. I used to try to remember all their names, but there are just so many of them, and usually I travel on a whim, paying little to no mind as to where I may end up. I had watched some disenfranchised youths beat down an elderly gentleman for what little change he had in his pocket, and that provided a brief bit of entertainment. Saw a young man who seemed to be coming home from work, looking quite pleased with himself for a hard day's labor, not knowing his lady friend was currently on her third John of the day. I had watched the first two out of sheer curiosity, but I still do not understand the clay puppet's obsession with the act. When it comes right down to it, I was just doing my very best to stave off the boredom that so plagues our kind. When lo and behold, a way to pass the time came into my sight. Although I was only paying half attention to my surroundings at that particular moment, I noticed the dead man as soon as he came into view. The recently dead all share the same look of perplexed confusion, which is almost impossible to not notice right away to those with a trained eye. I also picked up on the hint of comprehension in his desperate, panicked eyes. I assume I had missed the part where he had tried talking to people who could not see him, and had tried touching things just for his hand to pass right through. He was an average-looking human, brown hair, slightly tanned skin, and seemingly of average height for their kind. He was wearing a button-up shirt, a tie, and a pair of slacks, the outfit I presume he was wearing when he died. I've always found that particularly odd about humans. When shed of the husk that houses their true selves, they maintain the illusion of being human seemingly without realizing it. I assume it is part of the initial denial they all experience. I considered calling out to him, but realized there was no need. Maintaining my gaze upon him would be enough to catch his attention, as he was still looking around wildly, silently begging someone to notice him. I was mindful enough, however, to shift to my humanoid look so as not to send him running. I imagine he had had a stressful day thus far, and seeing me as I normally am would more than likely ruin my opportunity for distraction. The dead man continued to blunder his way down the street towards me, looking at passerbys, looking up at the overcast sky, even looking at his own hands, which, as a side note, is another strange habit of humans that I have yet to understand. I remained patient, however. There was no need to rush the moment. To the man, this street was a mess of confusion and fleeting hope, but to me, the rest of these clay puppets and their struggles and fleeting triumphs had ceased to matter. I kept my eyes on my new friend, and waited for him to notice my regard. Finally he did, and the look of sublime relief that came over his haggard face was the reward my patience deserved. He started a fast walk towards me that soon turned into the run of a man lost in the desert who has just spotted an oasis on the horizon. The distance that separated us was covered in moments, which in and of itself is not surprising. What was surprising was the fact that he was breathing hard when he reached me. Now, I have met enough of his kind to know that they subconsciously continue to manually mimic breathing for a while after they manifest themselves back into reality. But it still makes me inwardly chuckle every time I see it. Creatures of flesh were never meant to exist in spirit. "You can see me?" he said in a tone that was both question and statement at the same time. "Yes," I answered. Best to let him lead the conversation for now. "Then how come no one else can?" he asked. A logical question, seeing as he had not at all wondered about my nature yet. "Because you're dead, my friend," I answered. "The living can't see the dead, even the ones that pretend they can for money." "What?" Confusion in the voice, but the look of the penny dropping in his eyes. "I can't be dead." "Oh?" I asked. "You were born, weren't you?" "What?" "I said you were born, weren't you?" I repeated. "Yes," he answered. "Well, everything that is born dies, doesn't it?" He stayed silent now, realization dawning in his dull cow's eyes. "Where did you come from, my friend?" "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. "Where were you before you were here? And once you remember that, try to remember how you got there in the first place." "It was a car accident." He said this next more to himself than to me. "I woke up on the highway," he continued, now making eye contact with me once again. "But my car wasn't there. I was just standing in the middle of the road." This was not unusual. Rarely do the freshly dead manifest right away, and while they do not always return to the place where they died, the ones who go abruptly tend to. "A car drove right through me," he whispered. "I guess I knew then, but couldn't—" He paused, then, "I have to go home." "That's a bad idea right away," I said. "Best to first come to grips with your current situation, I think. Do you remember the accident?" I asked more for conversational purposes than any genuine curiosity I had. Very few people remember how they died. It's as if they block it out somehow. "Not really," he answered. "It was late. I remember that. I think I'd been drinking." Fucking humans. Deep down, they know they are squishy and fragile, yet they behave as if all the bad things happen to other people. However, if it wasn't for this man's faulty critical thinking, I would not have this opportunity for distraction, so I would not judge the man too harshly. Instead, I continued to try and educate him on his new existence. "Well, that certainly explains why you're still here," I said. "Many of your kind stick around when they pass suddenly. I think it's because of a certain amount of denial about what has happened to you." "Am I really dead?" the man asked, and the forlorn note in his voice almost made me feel sorry for him. "I'm afraid so, my new friend," I replied. "But don't fret. You're only stuck here until you accept your situation and find peace with the life you left behind." "Once the human in you is truly put to rest," I continued, "once there is nothing left but the pure soul you began as, and the connections to your former life are severed, you will move on in peace." Once I had finished, the man looked contemplative, seeming to finally accept that he had shuffled off his mortal coil and was now something new, something that likely wasn't covered in his Sunday Bible study, if he had attended one, that is. Then he turned a curious eye towards me, and I'm assuming he had finally noticed my odd appearance. As you well know, we can never truly pass for humans. Maybe from a distance, but not under any sort of real scrutiny up close. Maybe it is our too thin, elongated bodies, or our narrow faces whose features never look quite right. Perhaps it is our hands with their spider-like fingers, or maybe our eyes which are always ringed with gold. Personally, I've always thought it was the slight shimmer that surrounds us, the implication that there is something about our kind that is hidden from view. "What are you?" the man asked. "Are you an angel?" This is a common question, I find. Humans are optimistic for the most part, and always assume that it is the divine that will find them first. "Formally," I answered. "Formally?" he asked. "As in fallen, once an angel, but no longer." Fear came into the man's eyes along with realization. Honestly, it's one of my favorite looks on them. "Are you a demon?" the man blurted, his voice now growing slightly frantic. "Are you here to take me to hell? I wasn't a bad man. I made a few mistakes, sure, but I wasn't bad. Please, let me go. I just want to go home." He was pleading now. They all do that when they realize what I am. Sometimes I let them go on for a while, but on this day I was not in the mood for blubbering. I held up one hand, and he silenced. fearfully looking at my spidery fingers as if he had just noticed them. "Fear not," I said. "Let me clear some things up for you. First of all, I am not a demon. I am a fallen angel. There is a difference." "What difference?" the man asked, still sounding frightened. "I was created an angel, an original resident of what came to be known as the universe, a being of light and power, a creature of immense beauty and splendor. But I made a mistake, and now I reside here, perhaps until the heat death of the universe, or maybe until I'm imprisoned in that place you fear. I have no intention of taking you to hell, my new friend. Even if I could, there would likely be a seat for me right next to yours." A slight look of relief came into the man's eyes, but also more confusion. "I don't understand," he said. "I thought the fallen angels ruled in hell along with Satan." Apparently someone read Milton in college. "Not at all," I said. "Hell would be my prison, not my kingdom." "And Satan?" he asked. "Who?" I replied, genuinely confused at first, but then I remembered that that word didn't mean adversary to these people anymore. To some of them, it was a name. "Oh," I continued, "there is no Satan." "What?" Now the poor thing was truly baffled. "What do you mean there's no Satan? If fallen angels are real, isn't the devil?" "No," I said again. "There is no devil, my friend. The creature you think of is a construct of man's own making. There is not a single being that is the embodiment of evil and sin. The thing you call Satan is a boogeyman, something that is easy to explain and understand." "Now," I continued, "there was an angel that was eldest of us, a charismatic and powerful being that convinced a bunch of us that we should rule the heavens and everything else in existence, that as the original creations it was our right to replace our creator. So charismatic was this being that none of us ever considered the fact that we were outnumbered 2-1, and that even if we were to overcome the ones who remained loyal to the throne, we would inevitably have to somehow overcome the creator of the universe." Needless to say, buyer's remorse set in quickly on that one. After our short, rather pitiful rebellion, we ended up here, barred from returning to our home, and forced to watch your kind take our place in the kingdom. We scattered. Some of us still speak to our former comrades, but there usually isn't too much to say. And the fate of our elder brother is unknown to any of us. Whether he was cast down as well or destroyed, we know not. In fact, even though I remember them and the events that unfolded, I do not remember what they looked like, or even what their name was. I assume those things were taken from them, stricken from the record, so to speak, gone as if they never existed. "Do you have a name?" he inquired. "Yes, I do, but it is not one you shall hear, for it was given to me by my creator and is the last thing I possess of my former station." The dead man seemed to ponder this for a moment, then asked what I considered a reasonable question. "So, what do all of you do down here?" "Bide time, mostly," I said. "Wait until the end of all things, or our punishment, or for our Creator to finally extinguish us like so many meager flames. We all pass time in different ways," I continued. "Some tried to establish religions in their name so they could be worshipped as the gods they failed to become. Others travel the length of the infinite cosmos, trying in vain to find their way home. Most of us just watch humanity to pass the time, as that was our mandate since your kind first emerged, and it comes naturally to us. We watch your triumphs, your struggles, your betrayals, and your violence. We watch, and most of us try to figure out why you were created in the first place." "So you don't possess people?" the man asked. Again, a reasonable question. "No," I answered. "We cannot touch your kind." "What do you mean?" He looked genuinely perplexed now. I imagine that visions of puking teenage girls with spinning heads were passing through what passed for his mind now. "Think about it, my new friend," I said. If my kind could harm yours in any way, do you honestly believe that there would be any humans left? We would have exterminated every single one of you before you reached the Dark Ages purely out of spite. However, I continued, when we were cast out of our home, humanity became off limits to us. We cannot touch you, we cannot harm you, and we cannot possess you. So, all of that demonic possession stuff is made up? He asked. Not at all, I responded. What do you mean? I thought you just said you can't possess people. We are not the only spirits in existence, my new friend. There are things out there far worse than my kind. Demons? He asked. Yes, demons, I replied. What are... he began, but I didn't let him finish. Best not to worry about that. Best not to even think about it. Just know that a demon is the last thing you want to encounter, especially in your newly vulnerable form. While I can't harm you, a demon could put you through unimaginable suffering. Best not to speak of them, lest you draw one's attention. The man looked unsure and frightened again, which is how I like them best. Do not fret, I cooed. Find the closure you need here and move on. Leave talk of fallen angels and demons, for it will bring you no closer to your new home, and you don't want to remain on this plane for too long. Why is that? He asked. Your human souls are not built for existence here. They wither and rot, and eventually go screaming mad if they remain too long. Why? He certainly was an inquisitive sort. I don't know, I answered honestly. I didn't create you, so I do not know why you are faulty. Maybe it's because on this level of existence you are meant to be a union of body and soul, and without the body, the soul is weakened. Maybe it's to convince you to move on. Why are you telling me all of this? The man asked. Why do you sound like you're trying to help me? I'm not, I responded. Honestly, I don't give a damn what happens to you. You're asking questions, and I'm answering them, and I'm telling you things you need to know to survive while you're in this form so you don't go insane on me. But why? He persisted. Why talk to me at all? I figured you hated us. I do, I said simply, but I'm bored and you're something new to talk to. You have no concept of how long I've been trapped here, so any distraction is a welcome one. But why not try and trick me rather than help me? Trick you for what? I inquired. I don't know, he replied. My soul or something? And what do you presume I could do with your soul, provided that I could claim it at all? Do you think human souls are some kind of currency to my kind? Maybe a status symbol used to impress other cast-out angels? He almost looked crestfallen at this. I noticed this with many of them. I suppose it feeds their insatiable egos to believe that otherworldly forces are after their precious little souls. My friend, I said kindly, there is one being in the entire universe that cares about the souls of humans. The rest of us don't give a shit. This answer seemed to content the dead man, and he nodded his head as if making his mind up about something. So what do I do? He asked. You mentioned going home, I replied. What's at home? My wife and 2 daughters. Millie is 3, Samantha 5. Then maybe that's it, I said. Leaving behind your spawn when they are young seems to cause many of you to linger around past your expiration date. I suppose it's out of fear for their well-being without you. Your kind is still a mystery to me in many ways. Perhaps all you need to do is see that they will be all right without you, or at the very least that they survive. If that doesn't work, you can always try something else, but that seems like the best place to start. You really think so? The man asked. This is another strange trait I've found that a lot of humans have. The one that causes them to ask a follow-up question, which is essentially the same question they've asked before. I had already told this stray puff of essence what I thought, yet the human that remained in him compelled that he ask if that was what I really thought. It's a curious quirk of their kind. Yes, that would be my advice to start, I replied. And if that doesn't work for you and you require my advice again, call out to me. I will hear you. I don't know your name, though, the man asked, his eyes looking hopeful, like a dog who feels it has just made a new friend. What do I call you? Call me Basil, I said. It's not exactly right, but I will answer to it, and I will hear you wherever you are. We are linked now for the time you are here. He looked relieved at that. They all do, I find. They are so frightened of being alone that they never consider the further ramifications of such an idea. Thank you, Basil, he said. I'm going to head home, if that's okay. Unsure, hopeful, slightly stepping away from me as he spoke. You're welcome, my new friend, I replied, letting him know that he was free to leave without me pouncing on him like a monster from a fairy tale. Remember, if you need me again, just call out. I will, he said, and thank you again. I remained silent as the man began to walk away from me. He checked over his shoulder several times, as if he was sure I would be following him, and even gave me an awkward, half-hearted wave the second time he checked, and saw that I was still just watching him leave. I wondered if I should have told him that he could now travel by thought, but immediately dismissed the idea. A few of them have ended up in some very strange places that they could not get back from by doing that too soon. It's not a natural concept for their kind, you understand? To be a part of the universe still, but also separate from it. Only a few of them can grasp that they can now not only move wherever they like in space, but also in time. Before too long, he was out of sight, so I went back to my musings. Hearing 3 gunshots from the apartment of the working man informed me that that particular human drama had not turned out well. I wondered if I would be speaking to one of them soon. But this was a secondary thought. Mostly, I wondered if I would be hearing from my new friend again. I was pretty sure that I would. As usual in these matters, my assessment was correct, as by my account only 3 days had gone by before I heard him call out to me. With but a thought, I was with him. He was sitting on a curb in front of a medium-sized house in what I understood to be an area called the suburbs. The house was pleasant-looking, grass neatly mowed, 2 trees in the yard, the sounds of birds providing a steady, almost monotonous background music. Your house? I asked. He looked up, surprised by my sudden appearance. He looked distraught. Oh, he said. I thought it'd take you longer to get here. I travel a bit faster than you do right now, I replied. I could teach you in time if you like. He remained silent. No questions this time. What bothers you, my friend? I asked. My daughters, he began. They're teenagers. This, as you know, is common for them. Sometimes they don't manifest themselves right away. Why didn't you tell me how long it had been? He asked, looking up at me with accusatory eyes. My friend, I said, I was not even aware of your existence until a few days ago. How was I supposed to know when you shuffled off your mortal coil? My wife is remarried, he continued, as if I hadn't spoke. Goddamn car salesman of all things. That must have been tough to see, I volunteered. He remained quiet, looking back at the ground in front of him. You didn't stay to see, I began, but when he looked up at me with guilty, pain-filled eyes, that was answer enough. Even in spirit form, they remained so very human. I would not have advised that, I said, but I am curious. Was it the ho-hum we've been married for a while basic missionary, or was he giving it to her like he paid for her? Anger sparked in his eyes, and something else, hatred. That's my wife you're talking about, he said, showing not a hint of the fear that he had held in my presence only days before. Technically and literally, it's his wife, I replied. But I apologize if I offended. It's not you, he said, looking down again. I just thought maybe she'd wait, or not move on at all. By your own account, you've been dead for at least 10 years, I began. Is there a customary waiting period for your kind? And not move on? Would you wish for her to remain alone in your absence? I don't know, he said. Maybe. I mean, how could you just move on like that? How soon was it? Was my body even cold yet? Millie even called him Dad once. A fucking car salesman. Oh yes, this was exactly the sort of human I like. The arrogance, the self-importance, the how dare there be life without me attitude. Well, I said, treading carefully now, it is obvious that your separation from your family is what's holding you here. I would advise spending more time around them so you can see that they are and will be all right. That this man, this fucking car salesman, is and will continue to care for them in your absence. I think once you see that for yourself, you will be able to separate yourself from them entirely and move on. I don't know, he said. I just felt angry seeing them happy. How can they be happy while I'm dead? Do they even care that I'm gone? Perhaps, I said. They may lament your absence often. It's only been 3 days. You should observe them more. Maybe reach out to them by moving small objects you bought for them, or pictures they have of you. I can do that? He asked. Yes, you can manipulate the world around you, I replied. It takes concentration, but not that of mind. Your mind is useless to you now. Focus on an emotion, the gift that my Creator gave to your kind, the complex feelings only they share. Direct that emotion towards your target, and you can make the world of the living realize that you're there. Like a ghost? The man asked. Yes, my friend, I said, wondering to myself what exactly he thought he was now. After all, that is what you are in a very literal way. Yeah, I guess so, he said, looking like he felt a bit foolish for asking such an obvious question. Spend more time observing them, I repeated. Interact with them if you feel you must, but mostly just watch. They seem to be what's holding you back, so letting go of your connection to them will more than likely allow you to finally shed that last little bit of humanity that's keeping you here. You're probably right, the man conceded. It's just so hard seeing them go on without me. But I'll do what you suggest. After all, you know more about this kind of thing than I do, I imagine. Of course I do, I said. And if you need more advice, just call out to me. I will, he replied. 3 months passed before I heard from the man again. I was sitting in the ruins of Pompeii when I heard his call. I always enjoy spending time there, seeing the many souls rooted to the blasted ground, screaming their denials and curses to the gods that they believe rained fire and smoke down upon them. Within a thought, however, I abandoned my leisure time and was back with my new friend. The first thing I noticed was that his appearance had declined significantly. The hair he had imagined for himself was beginning to fall out, great clumps of it missing, revealing the smooth scalp beneath. He was thinner than before, too, his face now looking gaunt, with dark spots beneath his eyes, and thin lips held tightly together in a grimace. His clothes also looked like they were rotting off his body. The human form was beginning to shed, soon to reveal what was beneath. This time he noticed my presence immediately. "It's not working," he said as soon as I arrived. "What?" I began, but he cut me off, which I allowed. "It's not working," he repeated. "I've been watching them, and it only gets worse. He's teaching Sam how to drive," he continued. "Said once she gets her license, he'll get her a car from his lot." She hugged him, and when he said that, called him Dad. He looked shocked. Said that was the first time she called him that, and do you know what she said? She said, "Well, you are, right?" Like I never fucking existed. Like I never fucking mattered. "Well, I doubt that's what she meant," I began. But again, he kept speaking as if I had not said a word. "All of them are so happy, so fucking content. They play board games twice a week, sit down to family dinners, share their private little jokes, and I watch that sleazy salesman fuck my wife multiple times a week. She makes sounds like she never made with me, and my daughters laugh at his shitty jokes, and there's not a single picture of me in that whole fucking house." I remained quiet this time. He was doing fine on his own. "I hate them," he whispered. Then louder, "I hate them. Traitorous bitches, all of them. And that fucking salesman with his phony smile and the shit advice he passes off as wisdom to my daughters. I'd love to tear his fucking heart out. Paint the goddamn walls with his blood." "Direct that hatred towards him," I advised. The man looked at me then, and I noticed how hollow his eyes had become, and the glimmer of something dark and waiting to get out within them. "What?" he asked. "Direct the hatred you feel for that man, and the rest of those who you feel have forgotten you, towards him." "I can hurt him?" the man asked quietly. "Humans are off limits to my kind, my friend," I replied. "Not for yours. Yes, you can hurt him." The man smiled, revealing teeth that had begun to crack and change, the darkness within his eyes seeming to grow. "How bad can I hurt him?" he asked. "That, my friend, depends on you," I answered. Before I departed, I once again told him to call out to me if he needed to. Yet I did not believe I would hear from him again, so instead I stayed close to where he resided. 7 months passed, which, as you know, is no time at all, when I felt the change take place. I was at the spot in front of the house instantly, but the man was not outside as he usually was. I had not expected him to be, but it's always safe to check. I made my way towards the house and passed through the front door as if it was not there. The scene that greeted me did not disappoint. A man and woman lay in the main room of the house. The amount of blood on the furniture and walls informed me that what had happened here had not been quick. The woman lay on her back, a purse and set of keys near her body. I could almost picture the scene. The woman arrives home from wherever she had been, and something that used to be her husband is waiting for her. Had he pounced right away? Did he try speaking with her first? The carnage in the room, the turned-over furniture, the blood, the broken pictures, and state of her body led me to believe that the attack was instant. The woman's head had been bashed in with a blunt object, her face nothing but a mess of meat and bone. Her abdomen appeared to have been torn open by bare hands, intestines and viscera pulled from their natural place within the body and lying to each side of the woman. I wondered if there was enough human left in him to tell her who he was. I doubted I would ever get an answer to that question, or many of the others, but that was all right. Questions without answers make existence more tolerable, in my opinion. Gives us something to ponder over. The man lay next to her, the hammer he had used lying between them. For his part, he had opened his own throat with a knife. Again, I pondered an unanswerable question. Had the man been aware of what was happening? Had he watched himself viciously attack and defile his own wife? Did he wrestle for control, or was he blanked out by the clear rage of his intruder? I ventured upstairs. I found the first of his 2 daughters, I'm not sure which one it was, of course, in the upstairs hallway. She was lying face down, and upon inspection it appeared she had been strangled. Eyes bloodshot, tongue poking through blue lips, a look of shocked horror upon her face. The other daughter was in a room at the end of the hall. Seeing that the door had been kicked in, I assumed that she had retreated in here while he was attacking the other one. I found her on the floor of the room, a strange rectangular object in her right hand, the knife that had taken her life still buried in her chest to the hilt. Had he killed them first? I assumed he had, perhaps to keep them from interfering when the woman got home, or perhaps he had decided that none of them should go on without him. While the sight of human defilement is always a pleasant one, it was less interesting to me than where my new friend was. Had he moved from the scene already? I didn't think so. You will find that they normally linger where the transformation first happened for a while. It's almost as if they claim a spot as their territory. I concentrated for a moment and picked up on his presence. Transitioning straight up through the ceiling, I ended up in the attic of the house. A soft growl greeted me when I arrived. I scanned my surroundings and spotted my new friend in the corner of the attic space. The thing that had once been a man took a step towards me and then stopped. While humans can see our disguise, things such as this see us for what we are, and they dare not tread too close. "I'm not going to hurt you, my friend," I said, not knowing if it understood me at all. "Just let me look at you." The creature did not move. It was no longer recognizable as human. Its body was painfully thin, its lower half more spider than human. Its arms had grown twice as long as a man's, ending in 4 appendages that could be called talons rather than fingers. The head was completely bald and looked to be covered with an almost shell-like substance. Pure white in color, eyes like almonds that were devoid of anything but darkness that seemed to shift like a liquid. Its mouth a gaping maw of the same fluid darkness, broken up by pieces of the outer shell that appeared like makeshift fangs. A black fire sporadically appeared at different parts of the body. I imagine it produced an exquisite pain for the creature, further fueling its rage. You see, you never quite know what you're going to get when you're making demons. You just need to keep in mind that you can only nudge them in the direction you want them to go. They must make the transformation on their own. I find it is best to cultivate the emotion you're after, but even that is not guaranteed. Some give in to sorrow and become wailing spirits that do little more than interrupt the sleep of the living. Others give in to petty jealousy and spend their time trying to frighten all of those who come into their territory away, so they may be left alone with their prize. For some, madness is their downfall, turning them into unpredictable things that fling furniture, scratch on walls, scream during the night, but beyond that are relatively harmless. But sometimes you get lucky, and they give in to rage. Rage against the living, rage against the other dead, rage against God itself. These are the ones that possess, that can harm, that disrupt. Their rage over all they have lost, and against all those who possess life, makes them the most useful of their kind. "You're going to do some damage, my little friend," I said to the demon. "I name you Vilaka. You are bound to any who know that name, and are not to obey anyone who does not. You are bound to me above all else, for I am your creator," I continued, knowing that the creature understood this at its most fundamental core. "I command you to pursue your vengeance upon the living, to satisfy your hungers in any way you see fit, and to punish those who have what you do not." The demon bowed its head in acknowledgement, and slunk back into its corner. I wondered if it would move on from this area, A roaming creature of this level of rage would be useful, but ultimately it did not matter. It would maim and kill and destroy in this area until the house ended up abandoned or destroyed. Maybe a shaman of man would eventually come and try to cast it out. There are so few of them left, however, I doubted it. And that's all there is to it, my friend. I do suggest you try it yourself sometime. I have hundreds of demons bound to me, and each time they act, each time they take a human life or destroy one, I feel it, as if I had done it myself. It's a glorious way to pass the time, and the only way we can hurt those who are chosen above us. As much as I am loath to admit, our eldest brother was right. We could not defeat the Creator, but we can destroy his creation. It takes time, but you know as well as I do, we have all the time in the world. Thank you for joining us here at Nightmares Incorporated. I hope you enjoyed that sordid little tale, and we certainly hope to see you again next week. Until then, sweet dreams.